So last time we discussed why writing was important, and we talked about this idea of cuneiform. And this idea was basically writing on tablets. It was using these sharp wedge cut shapes that they would make from sharp reed ends, and they would do this in order really to start making writing. And they've been found all over Mesopotamia by archaeologists, which is really cool. And that helped us kind of know what happened. That's why we have a history book today, the way that we have it. And that was the big thing. The big thing was to keep records of the past ideas. That's why writing was so important. Was it because it kept these records? And so, we had these people that did this. And the people that did this after training, just like going to school, they became what are called scribes. And scribes were people that wrote down stuff. And they were very honored in society because not everybody, in fact, very few people could write, let alone read. Now think of that. Huge population of people. Only a couple of them could write or read. So the Sumerians, they produced a lot of literature. And Sumerian literature, one of them is called the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's a long poem, an epic long poem about a hero. And of course, they would write about things that were heroic or things that were epic because, writing took a lot of time and it took a lot of wealth to be able to do it. Now, once they had writing as a kind of form, it wasn't perfect. There wasn't grammar or anything like that. It was most likely just symbols that represented words or represented nouns. You would have to have a scribe to help you fill in the details. But aside from those details that weren't there, you had advances in other areas. The major advances were in math and science. So we talked about the irrigation system, but there's also the wagon wheel. That's helpful to get people to place. There was the plow, made farming much easier. A plow, if you can kind of Google it, but a plow is basically a wedge-shaped metal piece that you could attach to some wooden poles and have it pulled by a large animal, and it would make cuts into the ground so you could make those irrigation ditches. Of course, the next one they had was a sailboat. Now, when you got to think about a sailboat, as a sailboat not only needs to stay afloat, but the sail itself has to be able to catch the wind to propel the boat forward. Simple physics, but for them that was huge. And that was able to fix the need for, kind of muscle power, the rowers, right? The slaves that you'd have to row. So there's mathematical ideas. So geometry was a big mathematical idea. They were able to measure out fields and build buildings using geometry. They created a number system based on 60. So 60-minute hour, that's where we get our 60-minute hour. Or 60-minute second. Or 60-second minute, sorry. And they also were able to determine, based on 60, the idea of a 360, like 360 scope, turning all the way around or a complete circle. Now, they still were very religious people. And so in addition, the Sumerian people watched the skies, and they learned the best time to plant the crops and to hold their religious festivals. And because they were watching these skies, They were able to see how long the sun was up in the sky. They even developed ways to record the position of planets. So watching the skies and the positions of planets. And then they created a calendar. So this is pretty cool stuff. This is really showing us that they had some amazing bits of history and technology. Now I'm skipping the large section there, and I'm going to kind of skip a lot of this because I think for us that was the main pieces. So we were asking you, and I can take it there. But my main goal was to ask you to look at rivers, Sumerian city-states, religion, class system, and writing system. So for the rivers, we talked about the Euphrates and the Tigris, the ideas of flooding and the need for irrigation to travel and move that water into different locations and also use that water for crops. We talked about the Sumerian city-states, the idea and the need for building walls to protect your citizens, to have leadership, to have organization. The religion itself having to do with a polytheistic society. Polytheistic meaning more than one god. Monotheistic meaning only one in your religion. So they had many gods, and they attributed their gods different things that they couldn't explain in the world. Natural events, such as flooding, basket weaving, concepts that were in their everyday life. The class system, having the wealthy, having the middle class, having the lower class, having nobles, craftsmen, and even slaves. And then lastly, writing systems. Systems of writing that they carved in stone tablets to eventually lead to better and larger advances in their society, such as the discovery of math and science. This is the cornerstone of civilization. This is what we call the cradle of civilization, which is Mesopotamia. So your job today is going to be answering several different claims and evidence questions. You are going to make a comparison between those irrigation systems again. You're going to be asked about claims of evidence having to do with the walls, the rivers, the writing. Now, lastly, and this is the last part of this video, you have a narrative prompt. It doesn't have to be long. 2 paragraphs is fine. But you are an archaeologist who is in a lot of debt, owing a lot of money to a museum that hired you to find some relics from an ancient Sumerian city-state. You are successful in finding the location of this city-state. You learned important information about the society's religion, and you uncovered how they managed to protect themselves. The museum decides to keep you employed because of your success. 3 questions that you have to answer in your writing prompt or in your narrative. How did you find the location? A hint probably should have something to do with the writing that you find. Where did you find a location about their religion? Again, that could be from your writing. Again, the location could also be the rivers. You knew that Mesopotamia meant between 2 rivers. And then lastly, describe what the city-state did to protect themselves. So think about the walls, think about the advances in technology, think about trade. There's a lot there. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead and get to work.